Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
Hello and welcome in to episode 3, or episode 10 in season 3 of the mmjhl podcast. I'm your host, Graeme the G-Show Forsyth. We are brought to you by Goaltenders, Movement, Fitness, and Performance Elite Prospects, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Excited to be here on this New Year's Eve. 4 minutes before noon. This episode was supposed to come out at 11:30, but we ran late with the MFHL podcast, which is available to watch on our YouTube feed at this point under the live section. But as for the MMJHL podcast, excited for this one. Going to be no guest in this edition of the show, but what I am going to be doing is giving out some grades for all the teams through the 2025 portion of the schedule. We're also going to take you into, well, the biggest and latest trade made in the MMJHL. Might also talk about, names that could potentially be on the move for each team. Or, which teams that I feel like should go forward at the trade deadline, and, which teams do I feel shouldn't, should stay pat, or, which team should sell, which team should be buyers. That's all coming up on this edition of the MMJHL podcast. Let's get into it right away, shall we? As for the standings in the league, through 22 games for each 10 of these teams, no team's been better so far than the Transcona Railer Express, who ride a that's unfortunate. Wrong standings in place. Just a moment here while we sort this out. Well, I can't make the change, but we're going to be going through the teams as this episode goes along. We will show you how the final games of 2025 ended up going, however, as this ended up uh, being on the Tuesday, December 23rd, so 2 days before Christmas, and look at that. The St. James Junior Canucks with the biggest win out of any team with a 9-1 victory over the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. St. James, look out for them as this season goes along. A team, one of the youngest coming into the season that is on the right track. Coach Dick has his players playing at a high level right now. They'll hope for that to keep up into the new year. As for the St. Boniface Riels, defending champs, 3-game win streak heading into the break. The 3-1 victory over the Fort Garry Twins, who have now dropped their last 4 games. As for St. Vital, this nightmarish skid continues as they've lost 7 in a row now, losing with giving up a goal in that third period. That ended up being the difference for Pembina Valley to get the win. Their third of the season, is Pembina Valley already on track to having a better season than last year's disaster of a year for them. As for the Railer Express, they extended their win streak to 14 games. First team to not only reach 20 wins, but now over it with 21. As for the River East Royal Knights, it would be their 10th loss of the season. Charleswood, resilient as they came back to defeat the Stonewall Jets to end off the 2025 portion of the schedule with some good vibes. Winning that game while being outshot 34-18. But Charleswood, I think, just happy to get back into the win column, securing their spot in third place even more so, as they're now at 32 points on the season. As for the points leaders in the league so far this year, we see Cole Davis, but right behind him now is Jaden Ward. He's exploded in these last few games. A hat trick in the victory against the Pembina Valley Twisters on December 21st. Also had, I think, plenty of assists in that game as well. About a 6-point night or so. And then, 4 goals in that game against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, which just unreal performance from number 18, really breaking out into a superstar in this league. A couple of Stonewall Jets right there in the top 5. Nathan Brzezinski and Lane Richardson round out the top 5 as the Royal Knights captain has had himself quite a year. For Lane, I believe that it's been a career year so far for the captain. As River East, it's nice to see them back and, contention right now for a top 5 spot in the league. As for the goaltenders here in the league, no goaltender has been better than Sage Delarone at putting together wins so far. He's at a 14-1-1 record, and not only does he have the most wins, but he has the numbers to back it up with a .944 save percentage, 4 shutouts, which is the most in the league, and goals against average that is only bested by Owen LaRock, as his numbers have been pretty incredible too, as we can see there. 8-2 and a .956 save percentage. Pretty incredible stuff from some of these goaltenders so far. Also a big reason why Transcona and St. Boniface are where they are right now is the goaltending overall. Like, 2 very good goaltending tandems, and Alex Dominico has proven that he's more than capable in picking up the slack when Owen LaRock isn't in the crease. In fact, he's got a better record than the playoff MVP last season, as he has yet to drop a game in regulation as well by the stats on mmjhl.ca is where you can find him. As, by the way, Lane Richardson already with the most points he's ever had in a career, and that tops last year's total of 28 points in 43 games played. Yeah, he's already at 35 in 24 games played, as you can see right there. As for the players of the month, be sure to check these out every month on not only the mmjhl's website, but as well as in our broadcast partner and Prairie Sports Network's Instagram. As, yeah, I want to give congratulations to Gavin Halad, winning Player of the Month. Almost 2 points per game. No question that, he's very deserving of winning that Player of the Month award for would be November. So we're going to get December coming up next month, which should be very exciting. Cole Warsaba takes home Defenseman of the Month, a very strong over point per game month of November for a player that's really been rounding into form as this year's been going along. Owen LaRocque takes home Goalie of the Month honors as he had 3 wins and a .957 save percentage. Tracks for what he's been able to put up throughout the course of the season so far. And then Kalen Briggs for the Charleswood Hawks, a bit of youth, getting some recognition for this group as he was almost at 2 points per game with 15 in 8 games played. These get released every month on the mmjhl's website, as well as we put them out on Instagram. Prairie Sports Network does. Be sure to give them a follow. As for what was probably the biggest trade, I'd say the biggest trade of the year so far. I mean, how could it not be? It involved 8 players in total. It was reported on December 10th as Cashton Long and Riley Robert are now St. Vital Junior Victorias. The Vics also got the rights to Cohen Pilkington, goaltender in Jackson Hose, as well as 2008 born forward in Brandon Stronsiski. And Stronsiski, he's still in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, so he's playing in his grade 12 year there and looking to continue to have a big one for College Belleville. But the forwards that got sent the other way, Nolan Anderson and Aiden Anderson, as well as a defenseman and Nathan Forster. Huge trade, significant names heading the other way for St. Vital. Over to St. Boniface, we know how good the Anderson twins are. Both of them, I'd say, some of the most skilled players on the Vics for the past 2 seasons. The issue with them has been, well, there's been some health concerns. They haven't exactly totally always been available, and that's just the unfortunate part of this game. Some players just injury prone, and you hate to see it. But I think what St. Boniface does here, I like the move, even considering that these 2 players have an injury history. I like the move because you just load up your forward core, regardless of, the worries of, is this player going to be injured or not. Nolan Anderson and Aiden Anderson, they're 2 quality players, 2 very smart players, and Aiden Anderson, he's a dynamic talent. Nolan Anderson, he makes the right play usually every single time, a very efficient player, and 2 players that are very familiar with Jeff Mitchell. I've had a chance to play under him as a head coach, and he was St. Vital's general manager last year, but it's been a trend. St. Vital making a lot of moves with the St. Boniface Riels team. It's about the 3rd trade that's been made between the 2 sides this season. I like it a lot for St. Boniface because not only do you add skill, but you add experience into your group, familiarity with the Mitchell and St. Vital connection. Of course, Paul Castus has also had a chance to, I believe, coach these players as well. I'm just going to look back at Nolan Anderson, Aiden Anderson. Feels like they've been in this league forever, to be honest with you. But I'll just take a quick look here. Going to Aiden Anderson's history. Yeah, so he was here, 2023, 2024. I guess the year after, sorry, because cast as coach 2022-2023. As for Nolan, so I guess in a way he was kind of familiar with them. He got to see them in one game that they both played in 2021-2022. They both started their mmjhl careers back in 23-24. And, I mean, for St. Boniface as well, they're two players that you're getting that are both 2005 born, so you're going to get them heading into next season too. I love this move for the Riels because not only does it help them out, I think, short term, but it helps them out long term heading into next year, right? Because you'll still have them in your arsenal, and well, they'll be a year older with more experience that you're going to rely upon in that season coming up. In 2026, 2027. But as for the St. Victoria's return, a team that continues to get younger, even though, the Andersons, they'd be back next year. Forrester was a 2007 born defenseman. I'm not sure what exactly went down with Forrester on this Vicks team, if he just didn't want to play there or not. But it's pieces that the Victorias move to get overall a pretty good batch of, I'd say, 2007 born players back. We've seen what Cashin Long can do this season, as well as Riley Robert. Nowhere near as impactful as the Andersons at this point in their career, but I think that there's some good upside in Cashin Long specifically. And then you take a look at, a guy like even Brandon Stronsiski in this trade, who he's had a strong year so far with the College Belleville Barracudas as they play in the A Division in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. So you got a potential really good player coming to you next season in the shortest period of time that you could get this player, and then maybe you could even take a look at him this year by getting him to play games for your team, right, and seeing what you may have in store. I think that it fits St. Vitel's mold right now of continuing to get younger. Look, this was a younger St. Vitel team heading into the season compared to years past, and I feel like just knowing that they're pretty much they're slowly falling out of the playoff race right now. Like, they need to find a way to get back in the win column, and I feel like these moves aren't exactly to try to change that right now, but more so looking ahead into next year and trying to get these guys in to build that chemistry and playing the long game. And I think for St. Boniface, they're not only playing the short game, trying to bulk up their offense as much as possible to, in the end, in their minds, they're feeling like if they're going to win a championship, the final boss may very well be a team like the Transcon Railer Express, who have a ton of offense. So when that's the standard, that's the team you're chasing right now. Them being aggressive like this, loading up on the offensive side of things with two really good players in the Andersons, I think is huge, as well as getting who should be a talented defenseman in Forrester. The only thing that could make this trade a loser is if the Andersons somehow don't stay healthy. But again, you'll have them for next year too, and it's already a deep team in St. Boniface outside of these two. I think it makes the St. Boniface team even scarier on paper. A team which we'll be talking about, as well as all the rest of the teams in the mmjhl, coming up throughout this holiday special. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are to this one, mmjhl fans, if you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, so you don't miss any episodes like this, which will be hitting the ground running again in 2026. But as for 2025, we'll finish it off with some, team grades coming up next, as well as, just taking a look at the wonderful things these teams have been doing around the community during this holiday season. We'll also get into some thoughts on trade deadline and more coming up next throughout this episode of the mmjhl podcast, our holiday special.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
And welcome back to the mmjhl podcast. Happy to be back doing this thing on this Wednesday afternoon on New Year's Eve. Hoping everyone's doing well. Thank you so much for tuning into this one whenever you may be. Excited for Friday already, 2 days from now. We're going to be back in action to call some mmjhl hockey. I believe that St. Boniface, if you haven't heard, they're closing Southdale down for a period of time in January. I don't think until like the 3rd or the 4th, so this game will be played at Southdale Arena. It's a game that we're hoping to cover, but yeah, they're filming a movie. Apparently, John Hamm's going to be in it. Loved his performance in Mad Men. Great show, highly recommended, but yeah, I heard that Notre Dame could be the venue they play in, or, I mean, who knows, maybe there's some sort of workaround where they'll be able to play in Southdale, but it's looking like the Reals are going to be on the move. I'm not sure where the Royal Knights are going to be this month coming up. Of course, there's been a lot going on in Terry Sawchuk renovations and stuff, so yeah, going to be very interesting, and also interested to see which teams are going to be active during, well, this time until the trade deadline, which I know last year was on January 10th, so just taking a look at when that would fall on this year's calendar. That would be on the Saturday, and just looking back to last year, I believe this year would be on the 9th, since I believe the trade deadline would be every Friday of like the first full week back of the mmjhl's return to play in the regular season. So yeah, very excited to talk about more of that coming up in this episode. But as for our 2025 grades, these are kind of based off of like what I expected heading in of these teams, and then just based off their results so far. So a mix of like my preseason predictions for where I had these teams placed, and then it's also going to take into account, you know, where they're placed in the standings right now, all that. It's actually going to go from 10th place to last place to first place in the standings, and grades are going to fluctuate throughout. But we'll start off with the Pembina Valley Twisters. And yeah, giving them a D. I think that this is still in play. It can't get any worse than last year, right? Because I don't think it is worse this year. They've had a change in coaching, and since that change, I don't know what it is, but they've been able to put together a few wins. You know, even in that second last game of 2025 that we covered for them against the St. James Junior Canucks, St. James ran away with that game, ended up winning it 7-1. But Pembina Valley had some chances. They had some shots in that game, some good quality looks, and you know, just taking a look at last year, it was like an all-time bad team. I feel like they didn't even win a home game. It didn't even reach 10 points. They gave up 300 goals against. And you just look at this year, it is already better. Like, they have a home win under their belt already. They've been able to already get to the league website, has them at 6 points. I remember them losing in extra time to St. Vital earlier in the season. So that's why I've given them an extra time loss. But they're close to already achieving last year's 8-point total. Now for Pembina Valley, they're still, I think, talent-wise, a bit behind compared to the rest of the league, and it's just, I think, one of those time periods where this has been a really good franchise for such a long time, and nothing lasts forever. But even though they rank last in every single statistical category, I do like to say it seems like the effort has been a bit better this year. Seems like the coaching change of them bringing in not only a new coach, but Coach Unger, who has had a history coaching a team like the Selkirk Steelers, a junior A team in the past. I think that's huge for this group to have a bit of a new voice, and maybe you can find ways to get more out of a team that, so far this season, when you take a look at their goal scores, it's been very much by committee, but they don't have a goal scorer with over 10 goals, right? So I think that's the issue with Pembina Valley is they're going through a situation right now where they're in a rebuild. Let's be honest. Like last year, I think was an indication of that. This year, I think has been a continuation of that rebuild. Seems like there's been some positive steps to the changing and going in the right direction. And I think moving forward, like if this team, I think the goal should be is try to be competitive in every single game and try to take a period at a time, and maybe you can surprise some teams heading forward here in the mmjhl season. I give them a D, by the way, just because like it is, I think, already a better team compared to last year's. So yeah. As for the St. Vital Junior Victorias, I give them an F to start off this season. And it's kind of disappointing giving them this grade because I do like the talent that is on the St. Vital Junior Victorias squad. I do think, you take a look at where this franchise is going, and I've spoken about it already at length, it seems like, but it is truly the youth movement this year. It's a team that continues to get younger, of course, with the trades they've made, and you take a look at 4 of their top 5 point getters. 4 of them are rookies this season, and Liam Saxberg, Tyler Free, Ben Dinez, and Chris Ostorino. They've been able to, of course, add players like Cashin Long and Grayson Matthews into the equation. And, this team has some game breakers, too, or one in particular, like Blake Goretzky. He'd be the most notable one, but, there's also solid players on this team like Kobe Edwards, for example. Aaron Berchinger's another player they got from the St. Boniface Riels, right? And, this team for a while, in a stretch in November, it seemed like they were finally putting it together. Like, this was the first team to beat the St. Boniface Riels this season when they started off 13-0. It seemed like at that point they were going in the right direction, but this team's young and reckless. We've seen it many times this season where it's just been moments where, for whatever reason, it's just an unfortunate play gets made in their own end, or, they fail to clear out the puck after an extended period of time of being hemmed in their own zone, or they're unable to get the big saves in the time when they need the most, when before they were getting a ton of big saves. It just feels like the mix of inexperience, falling short in, some crucial moments in games, and, maybe getting a bit unlucky. It's all kind of played into what has been this result we've seen from them so far, and what has played into their 7-game losing streak. There also have been games where this team has just kind of been blown out of the rink, and for whatever reason, maybe they just got their opponent's best, and maybe they didn't exactly come ready to play. it's a grim year so far for the Victorias in terms of just the results, but it is a year of learning, and I think like you got to be excited about your future, knowing how your young talent has been so impactful already. I mean, a few of these guys are still the age where they're in high school, so I think given that, you know, short-term pain for long-term gain, as they say, that's how you got to be looking at it. If you're the Saint Vital Junior Victorias, I wouldn't be surprised to see this team maybe make one more move at the trade deadline. I wonder if it will be with a team outside of the St. Boniface Riels. I know that I mentioned that on a broadcast that I wouldn't be surprised if Blake Goretzky went on the move, but he's a 2005 born player, and I mean, I'd want to hold on to him if I'm the Victorias, especially next year. If you're looking at that being your redemption year, your bounce back year, he could be a huge part of that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I give them an F. I maybe got a bit too fired up about what this roster truly was heading into the season. Um, and of course, I think they had a lot to play for. Of course, with the loss of Carter Wilson, and I think like they still have a ton to play for him. And I think that the best they can do for him now is, just give your best effort every single game and fight until the very last whistle. Compete like it's your very last game. Still, he's very much in the back of this team's mind, maybe at the forefront a lot of days, right? It's just spoken about it so many times, but what a just unbelievable, terrible loss for this team. Not only losing a great hockey player, but an unbelievable human from the stories you hear. But yeah, I thought that with that level of motivation, that sometimes situations like that will bring out something in a team that you can't defeat and can't overlook. That they had a lot more to play for than a lot of teams this season in that regard. And yeah, I like the talent on this team's roster, but it hasn't come together for the St. Vital Junior Victorious team this season. And when you take a look at the standings, like even though this is an outdated version of them, like St. James is much more ahead now. I believe they have like a 7-point lead on the Victorias. So yeah, as they continue to get better, other teams in the league, St. Vital, it's going to be interesting to see where things go, but it seems like right now this is a team that's headed towards missing the playoffs, and got to give them an F given that they're a bottom 2 team right now, and we had them as a top 5 team heading into this season. As for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, they're going to get another F. Like the St. Vital Junior Victorias, and I'll break down why. This team has a lot of talent. We've seen it this season. We've seen them go out and compete with some of the best teams in this league, keep it close. Heck, they even went out and beat Transcona 6-1 near the end of October. Competed very well with the St. Boniface Riel shortly after that, when St. Boniface was still undefeated. But the problem with this team still remains. It's inconsistency. And, this team has probably the most experienced core out of any group coming back this year. Like, they had everyone to their disposal to bring back, even though not everyone did. But still, one of, if not the most experienced core in the league. That has been an 8th place, 7th place team consistently these past few seasons, and have not been able to put together playoff wins. But I was thinking this year, heading in with the experience that they've built up for themselves throughout these past 2 seasons, to be able to take that next step. I thought that this year would be the year, but it just hasn't been the case so far. This team is just been like the St. Vital Junior Victorias, but I guess magnified at a higher level just because of the output they've had against them. But they've had just some periods where they'll give up 4 to 5 goals, and it's just you can't have that if you want to be successful, and it's just been happening consistently. And it's just like, how do you move forward? You know that this has got to be the year that you put it all together. Finally, like that's your hope with this experience you have. You've been a team that has moved out talent consistently year after year to continue to get younger, but it's kind of like you're going through the same cycle of being near the bottom of the league, near the bottom of the standings. And I guess it's just frustrating because it just seems like this group has so much more to give, but as we currently stand, they're 8th in goals for per game, 7th in goals against per game, 7th in power play percentage, and 7th in PK percentage. And then, you take a look at shots for and shots against per game. That is one area of the game where it has gone a bit better for this team, where, in previous years they've been on average outshot in most of their games. But still, if you're controlling the play, that's one thing. But if you're giving up, you know, a bunch of goals in a singular period where you go down 4-0 after the first, and we've seen that type of thing happen many times this season for this team. It's just you're not going to find any success, and I feel like for whatever reason something is holding this Raiders team back. Now, against the Charleswood Hawks on Sunday, I haven't had a chance to actually look back. I was going to, but haven't had a chance to. There was a goal that some controversy at the end of Charleswood and the Raiders that ended up going against the Raiders and hurting them in the end and costing them 2 points in the standings. But even if they've been unlucky, there's been many times this season where it just feels like it just hasn't been good enough for this Raiders Junior Hockey Club team. How do you move forward? Where do you go from here if you're this group? Because you do have a lot of talent on your team. Like, I've talked about it already, but to name specific players on this group, like Carter Anderson, he's a rookie, sure, but he's been a huge bright spot for this team this year. The returnees and Riley Kushner, Logan Ash, Owen Laranko, these are all players that have been able to put up goals. This team has gotten good depth, but it's just like the Victorias. There's moments where they're getting behind the 8 ball, getting in a deep hole that they're unable to get themselves out of. And for this team, if they're looking to reach the next level, they need to find a way to put together more consistency. It's as simple as that throughout the course of 60 minutes in games. One team that has been putting things together as the season has gone along is this St. James Junior Canucks team. Three-peated from 2021 up until 2024, ousted in the first round last year to the Transcone Railer Express, which was a legendary run for this team. But under a full season, or I guess half a season so far, of being coached by Ryan Dick and his staff, it's a team that he has playing fast and a team that plays really physical. For St. James, when you take a look at the standings, it's a team that has been penalized the most in the league, but it's a team that doesn't really care, and they're just going to continue to come at you. They've averaged the most shots per game in the league at 42.2. They've held teams to 35.5 shots per game, which is a bit on the higher side here in this league, but still they've had that high amount of shots for it to kind of make up for that throughout this year. And not only are they getting some pretty solid defense right now, their numbers are middle of the pack, but offensively this team, I think, has been a bit surprising maybe to some this season. They have the second most goals in the league. I'm not sure if many people saw that coming, but talked about how this team was young heading into the season how they're only going to have one player aging out, and that's going to be their captain in Caden Osterman. But the players, the young talent that this team has really come through when we're talking about players like Jaden Ward, who is second in the league in points now. Nicholas Cullen, who's an '05 born player that, is been one of the most consistent offensive point getters for this team this year. Aiden Werfel, who another '05 player, he's a quote unquote shit disturber, I'd say. Apologies for my language, but yeah, he really gets under opponents' skin. Cole Warsaba, the rookie who just won Defenseman of the Month. Cole Robertson, who, big man with silky mitts, 2005 born player that has also had some pretty good experience heading into this season in the mmjhl. And then you look at their goaltending. Connor Murphy has put up solid numbers, and you also look at the other players that have played in goal for St. James. Is just gonna pull up the goalie stats. Yeah, Murphy's played most of the games, actually. He's played 18 of the team's 22 games so far. But, yeah, Cooper Johnson and Samuel Fontaine have been able to come in and give this team some wins in their time playing in this league so far this year, right? So, for Connor Murphy, he's been a workhorse in goal. This is a team that plays with a lot of speed in front of him, a team that has controlled a lot of the play in the games that they've been in as the season has gone along. It's also a team that, when you take a look at their schedule, not only defeating the teams that are near the bottom of the standings in terms of Pembina Valley, but also going out and keeping it close against a team like the Stonewall Jets, and winning in barn burners against a team like the Fort Garry Twins. Again, only a 6-5 loss to St. Boniface back on December 7th, and able to win at the start of December 7-4 against the Charleswood Hawks. So they've been able to put together big time wins. It's a team that is very in your face and still very much a villain. And what I mean by that is just teams despise playing against the St. James Junior Canucks. I know that a few GMs, one in particular, I'm not going to name his name, but he can't stand the St. James Junior Canucks. And then you look back at them three-peating, and everyone wanted to see them go down as those 3 years progressed, right? And you just hear the reactions at games, like parents, usually when St. James is playing, the parents from the opposite team that, whoever their opponent is, they have some choice words for the St. James players and get quite vocal about how they disapprove of, St. James and their playing style, and the physicality they play with. Like, they get under everyone's skin, it feels like, still. And this is a team that I feel like will only get better as this season goes along. Giving them a B grade because I had them at about, I think, 7th place, 6th or 7th place heading into the year, even though they're, near the bottom of the playoff picture right now, and they were even out of it for most of the year, actually, up until recently. I feel like I give them a B just because of how strong their numbers are so far this year. They're tied for 6th place right now, and they got the 4th best goals differential in the league right now. So, yeah, that's why I got them at a B. They're trending in the right direction, and this is also a St. James team that's one of the best teams in their last 10 with a 7-2-1 record. As for the Fort Garry Twins, it's been a down year for this group. A lot of roster turnover. Um, for example, like there's players that were bottom six players that are playing, top six roles now this year, right? And it's a team that, even though they were able to keep the likes of David Ballshaw, Alex Pauls and Ned, who I think has been this team's MVP. Uh, Matt Lizotte has come back as well. Caden Hedlund on the back end, Jace Matthews. Like, they do have some returnees, but you're talking about a group that lost players like, Dean Gorchinski. We're talking about players like Carter Halamandaris, Rylan Hugin, Darian Medwick being gone now, right? Ethan Johnson, Sam Matani, Nick Gilberto. The list goes on for this team. Like they lost probably the most significant amount of top end talent this season, out of any team in the league. When you just take a look at that, like Gorchinski was a 100-point getter last year. That's how ridiculous his season truly was. But do gotta give them credit. Even in this down year, they've kept themselves alive. They've seen some great contributions from rookies like Drew Russell, who leads this team in points with 25. Lucas Spencer has been a solid rookie presence as well for this team. Same with Luca Biancourt, guys like that, right? So you take that into account with the fact that, you're also seeing your returning players step up, and Matt Lizotte, David Balshaw, and Caden Hedlund. Like, Balshaw, Lizotte, both over point per game. Hedlund, as a defenseman, only 22 points in 24 games, which is only 2 points off a point per game for himself. So, from the players returning, the players that they need to be good, they've been getting great contributions from them, and then they've been seeing some rookies step up. And outside of everything, like goaltending at the end of the day will give them their best chance to have any sort of success this year. Like, you look at Alex Pauls, the body of work that he's put together this season, a goaltender that, I've heard from behind the scenes from sources that he wants to stay with the Twins. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He's played the bulk of the games, and even though he has an .891 save percentage, like, he's faced a lot of shots so far this season, but he's given them a chance to win games. He's stolen games so far this season, and with the amount of roster turnover that Fort Garry has had, that's exactly what they've needed. It's a team, though, that's been built on offense these past few years, and they've had really solid defense, but their offensive numbers have been really strong in the past 2 seasons. When you take a look at this year, those numbers are down, to obvious reasons, I think. Losing the talent they did, they're in a bit of a retool. Still, though, in terms of them looking to compete for a championship, in the grand scheme of things, I give them a C grade. I had this Twins team actually lower, I believe. I had them finishing 8th. They're a bit better than 8th place right now, even though they're, I guess, tied for that last playoff spot. I do like their consistency more so compared to the Raiders Junior Hockey Club right now, even though they're both 4 and 6 in their last 10. I just feel like Alex Pauls gives them a sort of X factor that some teams in this league don't exactly have in net. The Achilles heel, though, for Fort Garry will be their lack of offense. They can't outscore their problems like in previous seasons, and yeah, it's a team that I feel like gets a C grading. Just because if I had them 8th place, I know they were 1st place last year, but yeah, they're in a race right now for like a 6th spot, middle of the pack type of spot. So yeah, that's why I would put them with a C grade right now at 10, 12, and 2. As for the Stonewall Jets, ooh, I gotta fix something here. We will hop into the Royal Knights right away. But first, I want to talk about Stonewall. because yeah, this is what it should have looked like. I give them a B grade. Their record is wrong. Should be 13-10-1. So ignore the record. Yeah, I give them a B grade. They ended strongly in 2025. This was a team that went 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. You take a look at the wins that they were able to put together down the line, like for this Stonewall Jets squad. They were able to defeat one of the best teams throughout December in St. James. They also took down St. Boniface, the Riels, the game before, 3-2 in overtime. That was after bouncing back from a 4-1 loss to Transcone of the Thursday that week, and they started off their month with a 9-3 victory over the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. Sure, they did end it with a 3-2 shootout loss against the Charleswood Hawks. An overtime loss. No, it was in regular time. Sorry. So yeah, even though they lost 3-2, it was a close game regardless against Charleswood, a game where they ended up maybe letting it slip away from them, which they obviously did if they were up in that game. But yeah, I still think it was a strong ending, all things considered, for how the season's gone for this team, because I feel like they're underachieving a bit. Sure, they're at 10-1 so far this year. It's a team that is in contention, I think, for third place still as the year goes along, and right now, in a comfortable position to finish maybe at worst as the fifth place team in the league. But I feel like when you take a look at Stonewall, the amount of offense they have, for them to only be averaging the sixth amount of goals for per game, it's a bit underwhelming to me. To only have the fifth ranked power play is a bit underwhelming to me, given the roster that this team has. And we've seen it. Peyton Bateman, Gavin Halad, they're in the top 5 in scoring. That's great, right? But there's so many other guys on this team outside of that, when we'll take a look at the stats in a minute, go through a few of them. But yeah, you just take a look at their start to the season in October. Struggled to put together back-to-back wins most times. You take a look at November, another type of situation where they win a close game and then they end up losing back-to-back, although they gave a heck of a fight in both of those against the top-end teams in the league. They won a close one against Pembina Valley, for example, and then drop a next one against St. James Junior Canucks, and then followed up with a loss against the St. Vital Junior Canucks. But then we start to see them turn a bit of a corner near the end of the month of November, beating Charleswood 5-4, and then a 5-1 win over the River East Royal Knights, and then they end off the month with an 8-5 loss to Fort Garry. So I've already talked about December. Basically, this team is kind of similar in the sense, the talking point to the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, where they're just lacking some consistency right now. And I think they've found more of it as the season's gone along. I do still think they've been underachieving a bit, but man, they do have the makings of a contender when taking a look at this roster, led by Peyton Bateman, of course, captain in Carson King. Gavin Halad has had himself a heck of a year. And when you take a look at this team's depth, like, they have 3 goal scorers over 10 goals. Alex Kaczorowski has 9 goals, Halad with 7. He's mostly been an assist guy, as he has 30 assists this year. But I guess I'm looking at guys like Cohen Chang more so to step up, who only have 4 goals so far this year. Even a player like Alex Kaczorowski, like, 9 goals is great, but you could expect even more out of him. I guess what I'm saying is, like, this team has the depth. They've shown that it's very strong this year and last year, but how do they kick it into that next year now, which is going to be my question, and going to be very interested to see it, because This is a very fast team, a team that plays with a lot of pace, a team that is a lot to handle when they can get to their cycle game, and also a team that has a really good goaltender in Spencer Hunnam, who continues to get better and better as this season goes along. So they have the makings of a contender. I honestly could see this Stonewall Jets team getting past the first round, making it to the Final Four, depending on how the rest of the season goes, what their first round matchup looks like. Don't sleep on the Stonewall Jets team. I think that, like I said, underachieving a bit so far, but the makings of a contender, and if they're able to put it together, it's a team that's 13-10-1, not 10-12-2 like I have it here. I would not want to be playing them in the playoffs, no matter who you are. But yeah, they get a B grade, you know, top four team, um, one of the best goals against differentials in the league, and right near where we had them heading into the season. Had them in third, but respectable tie for fourth place right now. The team they're tied with just been the story of the year. Although it was a disappointing end to 2025 for this River East Royal Knights squad. As for River East, we're just taking a look at their last 10. I mean, they go 3-6-1. Currently sit 13-10-1 in the standings, tied with Stonewall, as I said. But just taking a look at their schedule and how things went for them, in December. Some close games in there, but yeah, not a great way to start off by losing to Pembina Valley. They lost 5-2, and if you're the River East Royal Knights, coming off of what was your biggest one of the season, pretty much a week before against St. Boniface, you had to be really disappointed in that one. And yeah, I guess just compared to how they started off 2025 with some of the losses that they had, some of the results that they had, a bit of a disappointing ending to the calendar year. But all things considered, they're the best story of 2025. This is the team that missed the playoffs 2 years straight after finishing second place in the league, having Coach of the Year winner Mr. Bonney. But yeah, they change up the coaching staff this season, bringing in Manny Manuke, his son Manny Manuke Jr., as well as Anthony Jacob. You had a team in River East which, heading into the season, I ranked them 9th. That's just because, I didn't want to be the one to, maybe jump the gun on this team to put them in the playoffs, knowing that they had the makings of a playoff team if they were able to put it together. They just didn't give you hope in the past 2 years that they were able to do that, but they have been able to put it together so far. They're 13-10-1. But it is time to level up, in my opinion, now. Teams behind you are getting better in terms of, the team that's tied with you in the Stonewall Jets. I feel like they're only going to improve this season goes along. It's looking like St. James is on a similar trajectory, just with the amount of offense they've had and, how they continue to play, and the fact that, in your last matchup against them, it was a close one. You didn't get to play them in December due to that game being canceled, but you can make an argument that St. James could very well beat this River East Royal Knights team at this point, if they were going to match up today, right? So it's time to level up for this team that has gotten some really good depth scoring throughout their lineup, has gotten some good performances from their goaltender in Kyle Bielman, but like the teams I've talked about before them, there's been some moments for this team where there's been a bit of let up in their play. Like I said, it wasn't as consistent as it was at the start of the season, heading into the end of 2025, and at the same time, like, there were a lot of games early on in the season where, River East would win in some high scoring fashion and comeback fashion. Maybe that level of play isn't totally sustainable as the year goes along, and maybe that's why we've seen a bit of a drop off from them. But yeah, it's a fantastic story to start off this year. This team ranks about middle of the pack in every major offensive and defensive category. It's a team that, when they can get their forecheck going, they're hard to stop. It's a team that has, you know, notable talent when we talk about Lane Richardson, who's having a career year. Kalen Reynolds returning after spending a bit of time with Charleswood, the Hawks, last year with the playoff run, so his experience coming back is huge. Liam Urchioli, he's been big time. Graham Maslow, right? A consistent player who's put up points throughout his mmjhl career consistently. He's had 14 and 19 games played this year, and they got so many other guys outside of that. They only have a few players that haven't been able to put that puck into the back of the net this year. And yeah, I guess for River East, it's just about how can you level up your play, and can you find more consistency throughout your game as the season goes along. I think that's going to be the challenge for this group heading forward. As for the Charleswood Hawks, 15-7-2 heading into the break, comfortably in third place right now. They're a well-built team, but not as well-built as last year. I think that last year kind of felt like the year for Charleswood, given that St. James wasn't at full power. You had one of the more experienced squads in the league. And, you were a second-place team last year, too. Like, you finished the season second place. You're able to get back to the Final Four, but then a disappointing end to the season as they got gentlemen swept against the Transcona Railer Express. And honestly, when taking a look at this year's team, like, there are some similarities to last year's. It's a fast team. It's a team that's gotten really solid goaltending so far this year. I've also heard that they may be getting Keegan Gordon back, which that would be a potential huge benefit to this Charleswood Hawks team. And you look at them offensively, they're third in goals for, third in goals against per game. These are per game averages, by the way. As for the power play, they actually got the number one ranked power play in the league right now, with the top 3 penalty kill at 84.1%. So everything on paper is there for this team. It's a team that has some good depth. They do it by committee once again. Elliot Lewis, this team's captain, has stepped up big time. Kalen Briggs has been sensational as a rookie. Rookie of the month for November. Tyson Sperber, of course, has missed a few games, but tied for the team's lead in points. Also, Nathan Fussen coming back. Like, this team has a lot to like from that standpoint. And then you take a look at some of their rookies, like James Franklin, already at 5 goals. Shea Guarino, we've seen him put on some displays of magic so far this year too, right? And then, even taking a look at their goaltending, been pretty split so far. Mark Salmon over 900 save percentage, 9-4-1 record, and then you take a look at the rookie goaltender in Aiden Kuo, a 900 save percentage right on the dot. So with a winning record as well for Kuo, 6-2-1. The games that he's played, that's per the mmjhl's website. So all of that into account, like, this sounds like a championship contending team, right? But I saw something last year in the semifinal series against the Transcona Railer Express. It's just something that I haven't been able to shake when watching this team, and every once in a while it seems like this happens, and I don't know if it's just a lapse in their mentality or whatever the case may be, but it just seems like, much like the teams I've talked about already in the Victorias, the Raiders, not to the exact same extent, but similarly, it's just been moments that have costed this Charleswood Hawks team, like for example, last year, watched them in Game 5 against the Transcona Railer Express. I saw two really bad giveaways and just, you know, a bit of a step behind or two on the play, and we've seen that at points and moments this season for the Charleswood Hawks, which, you know, has kind of worked against them this season once again, and why wouldn't it? And I just feel like at certain points, this team so far this year, for whatever reason in games, even with that win against the Stonewall Jets, we saw them get outshot in that game. Um, they were still able to come away with the victory, but we saw them last year in the semifinals. I guess my point is this. In the big moments, cough up the puck in crucial moments, which cost their team, but we also saw them kind of getting hemmed in their zone more as the season went along, and seeing their goaltenders getting work to the point where it's just the wheels fell off for them. So they got the talent. We know that. The stats have proven that they have the talent this year, but does their talent outweigh the other issues that I've just been talking about, right? Like the mental aspects of the game. The fact that, are you going to be able to sustain getting outshot consistently in games? Because when you take a look at Charleswood, like their shots for shots against, like they're pretty even too on average, and that you've also seen so far this year that this has been a team that has been outshot in some of their wins, and you're just thinking come playoff time, do you get the same type of results if you're getting outplayed like that? It's just, I guess I got some questions. Charleswood, when I take a look at them compared to the top two teams in the league right now in the St. Boniface Riels and the Transcona Railer Express, when you watch those teams play, the margin of error is razor thin. And I just feel like they're not exactly at the top of their execution at certain points. And I feel like that could be costly for them in the end, is I guess what I'm trying to get to with this Charleswood Hawks team. But yeah, I give them a B just because I expected them to be a fourth place team this year. At least fourth. They're at third right now, comfortably in that position, with the stats indicating that this is a top three team to start off this 2025-2026 regular season. But as for the Riels, who are in second place right now, we've graded them an A. The reason for this, just thinking of going with maybe even an A minus, but the reason they're not an A plus, not an A minus, the reason they're an A is because they finished off with a 3-game win streak. Of course, starting off this season with a 13-0-0 record, it felt like at points like this team would never lose games. Like they'd either dominate to start off or find ways to come back in games. We saw that in the playoffs last year, and we saw that in many games to start off this year. But then they drop a few games, right? Like to the St. Vital Junior Victorias in a shootout, and then the next game they end up losing to the Charleswood Hawks. They've ended up losing in extra time to teams like River East and Stonewall this season too. Stonewall, I believe, got them in their most recent matchup. But just taking a look at St. Boniface's schedule. Yeah, it was in overtime in their most recent matchup against against Stonewall. And then, yeah, they also had a lot of issues against the St. James Junior Canucks as well. Survived that game, which was their second of the month. So yeah, a bit of a turbulent ride in December for this squad. A team that started off December with a 2-game losing streak, or with a 1-1 record, and then fell to 1-1-1 with the 3-2 loss to the Stonewall Jets, and then they were able to put together 3 straight victories, although one of them came against the Pembina Valley Twisters. So I guess the twist is you start off 13-0, you're thinking that you're just maybe going to run away with it, but then this league is a reminder that, hey, it's there's always some sort of adversity, I guess, or not adversity, that's not the right word. I guess what I'm trying to say, trying to look for the right words. And while we do that, actually, I think it's time to take a break. I've been talking quite a bit for nonstop here on this edition of the mmjhl podcast. When I return, we'll get right back into the St. Boniface Riels on this edition of the mmjhl podcast.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry upper deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
And welcome back to this edition of the mmjhl podcast. Holiday special, holiday edition. We're going to get into 2 more teams here, continuing with the St. Boniface Riels. But yeah, just to kind of sum up what I was talking about, a dream start. They started off 13-0, suffered a few losses near the end of November, started off December kind of rocky with a 1-1 record, and then finished it off with 3 straight wins. They're only, when you take a look at the standings between them and the Transcona Railer Express, like, they're not that far out of first place. I think first still very much up for grabs for the St. Boniface Riels team. Who, when you look at the standings, like, they're only 2 points off of Transcona. Been battling hidden adversity too. I think for viewers, it's very important to note too that this Riels team hasn't exactly been at full strength in any of their games, where they've been missing regulars, and they've seen AP step up and contribute nicely to this year's squad. And then I just take a look at how they've been stocking up, right? Realizing that, they got a great group in place, but looking to get a bit more experience into the group by, trading away 07, 06 born players, or along the lines of those age groups, to bring in 04s and 05s, like we've seen already with the trades of bringing in the likes of Connor Mitchell, the Andersons as well, right? I think that them stocking up is just, like I said, respect to their opponents. They know that they're going to need a lot to go right for them to be able to come away as back-to-back champions to defend their title this season. And you got to give respect to Tyler Moore and this organization for recognizing that, and for trying to give this team the best situation to achieve that. Because look, the St. Boniface Riels team, even before making those moves, they got everything you want in a team to not only be a championship contender, but to defend the title too, right? I think that offensively, we've seen a bit of a dip in their production as the season has gone along, but this is a, at the very worst, a top 4 offensive team in the league. At their best, they're the best defensive team in the league, with arguably the strongest goaltending tandem in the league as well, with Owen LaRocque and Alex Dominico. As we've seen Dominico this season, he's put up fantastic numbers, with 11 wins so far. And the Riels, like the team that matches up against them so well, and for obvious reasons, is Transcona. And the reason for that is that, for St. Boniface, I'll talk about them, I guess, because we'll be getting into Transcona right away. But for St. Boniface, they just play with so much pace. They never really take a shift off when they are playing at their best. They're going to make it extremely difficult for you to get grade A opportunities, clean grade A opportunities, and then they can hem you in with an unbelievable amount of pressure on the cycle. And even if you are able to beat the pressure down low, well, they got great support at their blue lines as always, and they're able to do a really good job of cutting down, really all areas of the ice. What I'm trying to say is they're almost a perfectly built team to play in this league, and you just take a look at the rosters outside of a select few teams in this league. If St. Boniface brings their best, there's not many teams, if any, that can beat this team in the mmjhl on a given night. And yeah, I give them an A just because they started off so strong at 13-0. Cooled off for their standards a bit, but still one of the best teams in this league and very deserving of an A. But the team that we had heading into the season as the I guess our first place team and our championship winners, and it's looking to hold up so far. That's the Transcona Railer Express. I give them an A plus. How can you not? First place in the league. They have the most goals for, the least goals against, and they're on a 14-game win streak. The question is, when does this train end? Because all win streaks, they don't last forever. And when it does end, I'll be very interested to see how this team responds. Do they start a bit of a losing streak? Sometimes that could tend to happen after you've been doing a lot of winning. You suffer your first loss, and then you're kind of thrown into a whole new situation in terms of your mindset sometimes. But, with this team that's an offensive juggernaut that has so much depth, so many weapons that can hurt you up front, with so much experience too, as they didn't really lose much talent at all. And for the talent that they've lost, like we've seen the rookies on this team that are newcomers fill in very well. So not only do you got elite talent out in front again, but you got fantastic goaltending. Like Sage Delarone, the league's wins leader, wouldn't be surprised to see him come away with goalie of the year. I think at this point for me, it's probably him between himself as well as Owen LaRock, maybe Alex Dominico is in that conversation, maybe a few others, but yeah, he's been, I think, in terms of the body of work, I would say the best goaltender so far in the league this season. He's proven that. And yeah, this is a team that's coming off of a finals appearance last year. A team that actually was the first place team in the league heading into the new year last year too. So that begs the question, is this deja vu? And do we see the same type of downfall in this team and a way in their record? Because January last year, if I remember correctly, was a pretty tough month for that team. There were a lot of games where they'd end up losing, where maybe they'd be up, but they were just unable to hold leads. And I think what we got to remember last season was this was a team that was pretty darn young. A team that I think last year proved that they were a step ahead in their development. And I think that when you just look at last year compared to this year, I think that last year, I think this team has learned from that and overcome that adversity throughout time, dating back to the playoffs. I think them winning that series against the St. James Junior Canucks got some sort of monkey off this team's back to the point where I don't think that we're going to see the same type of result. I think that this team has grown leaps and bounds since, dipping in their play last year in the regular season. I don't expect them to keep up this winning streak, but I think from now until the rest of the season, there's going to be very few games that this Railer Express team is going to drop. And for me right now, like, they're in line for first place. This team has, when you take a look at the standings in the league, which is just, it's pretty insane. They're at 115 goals for. The next best team is, well, the St. James Junior Canucks at 103, but still, that's 12 more goals compared to that. And in terms of them, comparing them to St. Boniface, they got 20 more goals than St. Boniface. And then I look at this stat, which may be the most damning for teams in the league. Not only does this team have that elite level of offense, right, but only 43 goals against. So that's 3 less than the St. Boniface Reals, which their identity is more built on defense compared to the Railer Express. But with all of that being said, I just feel like for now, like Transcona, for me, they were the first place team heading into this season. They've proven that so far this year. In my opinion, with just the amount of talent they have, when you talk about players like Nolan Vandenbush, Trey Sellon, so many others. I'm just going to pull up the roster right now. But Ryder McClure, Declan Whiteman, Nathan Turner is back and healthy this season, and once again leading this team in goals. Sylvester Cameron, the rookie I was talking about, or Cameron Sylvester, he's been, sensational, filling in on a top line spot, 10 goals, 11 assists. And then you look defensively, I think in terms of offensive output from decors, Transcona has maybe the biggest advantage out of any team in that league. When you take a look at Caden Berchanski's 18 points in 22 games played, Runco's 15 points in 24 games played, Jace Larkins has been getting on the scoreboard as well, right? And, Kyle Todoric with 2 goals on the season, too. And then their goaltending tandem's just really strong. And that, given that they've won 14 games, yeah, no doubt with them getting an A+. And yeah, I think that this time around, like I said, I don't think this team drops many games moving forward. They've rounded into form pretty nicely, and I think that, they'll learn from last year's experience of seeing a dip in their play, and they've gone through it, they've corrected before, so they're more experienced now than ever to know if they do start to maybe go in the other direction, they can tap into those things that they've used to get out of the slump before, if that does somehow end up happening. But yeah, what we're gonna do is we are going to be talking trade deadline coming up on next week's edition of the show, since we will be hitting you before trade deadline passes and hits, because, yeah, I am quite behind schedule. We got another edition of the podcast coming out, which is going to be the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast, Scholastics, which will be coming up very soon here on our network. Was supposed to be coming out at 1 originally, but as you can tell by the time, if you are watching this live, that will not be the case. What I will be showing you, though, is I always love this since it is the holiday season and Christmas time, leading up to it. Many teams around the mmjhl helping out in the community. You've seen the Charleswood Hawks with their partnership with Sleep in Heavenly Peace to build beds for children in need. They did a Christmas cheer board as well. Great to see them representing this league so well. The Twins with a Christmas cheer board hamper. The Riels took part in a community food drive where they were thanking everyone for donating here and stuff. Shout out to the players, parents, and fans for being a part of the community food drive with Harvest Manitoba. As for the Stonewall Jets, they ended up, delivering winter clothing and socks to help those in need. We were actually there for that night when they scored the opening goal in that game against forget who exactly off the top of my head. Oh, it was the St. James Junior Canucks in what was a very exciting game. But yeah, that was an electric moment, and it was great to see them being able to give back to a great cause in a creative way. And then finally, for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, they helped out at a soup kitchen and also did a Christmas food hamper. Shout out to all of these teams going out of their way, you know, um, using their time to help make a difference in the community, and being able to have the power to do so and actually doing it is special to see that. So, yeah, before we let you guys go here, I want to give a special thanks to everyone who tuned in to the mmjhl podcast for not only this episode, but all throughout 2025. Very excited for what's to come in 2026. By the way, we are going to be broadcasting 2 hockey games on Friday night. Charles Wood and Pembina Valley, as well as St. Boniface taking on the River East Royal Knights. We'll also have a game broadcasted for you on Sunday. All details will be available on our Uscreen service soon. Want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring this edition of the show, of course, and Elite Prospects, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Terrico Goaltenders, and Movement Fitness and Performance, and as well as, well, yeah, a special thanks to you, the viewer, for tuning in to this one, too. It's been a great year. Can't wait to be back to podcast more and to bring you up to date with all the great stuff happening in this great hockey league. Happy New Year's, everybody. Happy, or merry belated Christmases, I should say, and I hope you've had a great and safe holidays. Can't wait to be back in the rink 2 days from now. Until then, I've been your host, Graeme, the G Show Forsyth. Peace and out and waving so long, everybody. So long.